Good morning! Well, I've got a little bit of time before I do my checkout this morning. I'm staying in Protaras, which is close to Ayia Napa, Paralimni, Larnaca, kind of. It's like 45 minutes from Larnaca. So I thought I would do a Q&A. I've been receiving quite a bit of questions. Okay, so wait, I need actually my computer for this because there is quite a bit to go through. If you're new to this channel, I'm Audrey. I've been a digital nomad for over 4 years. I started before the pandemic. I'm originally from France. I moved to Australia for a while, so I'm also an Australian citizen. And I love the Latin cultures. So I speak Spanish, English and French. And I work and travel online. I'm a growth hacker, digital consultant and content creator. That's what I do. And I've been working and traveling full time for the past 4 years, which means I don't have a base. I've started this channel because I want to help other people do the same. I've learned so much as a person. I've grown so much. I've met so many incredible people. I've had so many incredible stories, amazing moments, that I really want to use that channel to inspire others and help others and connect cultures and people together, because that's really what makes me loving being a digital nomad, is being able to share love, cultures and having stories from all over the world and connect with interesting people. This is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I used to have a full-time job in the past. I feel like I've really started connecting with myself and loving what I do since I've been on the road. It's not for everyone, but if you're interested in it, I would say keep on watching, because I'm going to spill some tea with lots of frequently asked questions on what it is to be a digital nomad, what it's like and how you could potentially become one if that's what you're into. Okay, first, something for people, I guess, that are not at all in this kind of field. What is it to be a digital nomad? So I guess a nomad is someone that travels, and digital means that that work can be taken online. What kind of work can you do as a digital nomad? That's another one I get quite a lot. And the answer is any transferable skills that you have could potentially be taken online. Bear with me. For example, let's say you're working, obviously physically, in a job. Well, can your skills be taken online? For some cases, you can't, because you physically have to do something. If you're an electrician, then you might have to go and repair electricity somewhere. So that's a bit tough. For those people, you might need to look at what interests you, what skills you've got in general, like what do you actually like doing, what are you good at, and perhaps do a course or see how you could transfer them for a potential nomad job. Other professions like HR could be taken online. If you're a personal trainer, you could train your clients online. If you're a consultant, if you're a nutritionist, if you're a beautician, you could potentially have seen girls literally creating their Instagram, and then every time they go traveling, they get clients in, and they usually go, let's say, to the hotel of the clients or the house of the clients, and they do that way. So you could potentially do that. It's like coming on site. As long as you've got an online presence, people will follow you, and then when they realize you're in their country, then you could potentially, you know, go and deliver that service. Obviously, if you want to create an online business like an e-commerce or sell an online service, it could potentially be, let's say, you might have a job and you've got a lot of knowledge in that job. So let's say you're a salesperson. Well, maybe you could start a course, do master classes to train salespeople and deliver them through Zoom instead of, you know, being physically going to events or being with teams physically. Like, I mean, with COVID, I feel like a lot of the companies now have realized that it's okay to work remotely, and it works. Because before, I feel like when I started being a digital nomad, like I started before the pandemic, I would get companies reaching out to me and I was like, yes, I had two conditions. First, I'm a freelancer and contractor, so I'm not going to become an employee, which means I'm flexible, I manage my own hours, I give you like a package for the service, so you're not going to micromanage how many hours I do. That's none of basically their business, as long as the job gets done. And two, I want to be able to work from wherever I want, whenever I want. And companies were like, no, you know, some of them were like, we need someone physically, you need to be in the office working with the team. And I was like, I'll be working with your team. We can do it on Zoom or any other, you know, platform you're using. And they were like, no, we need to have you. And then I told them, I don't think we're a right fit, because for me, if my work is good and my work ethic is good, you're going to get the deliverables and you're going to be able to see the impact, whether I actually do the job or not. It's quite easy to see if someone is bludging. I mean, if you task them with something with a deadline and it's not done, that's it. So I told them, you know, take me for a trial, and there's no commitment from you, because it's not like I'm signing a full-time job contract. So I'm a freelancer. So you could just kick me out of the position and that's it. But some companies were absolutely no, we're not doing that. And I feel like with the pandemic coming, there's been like a mindset shift, and companies have realized that it's okay, it works, and people are productive and people are happier. Happiness means more productivity, means better results. I truly believe that. If you're not happy in what you're doing, it doesn't matter how good you are, the results are not going to be as good as if you did the same work, being happy, not stressed, according to your own productivity schedule. Because some people may be very productive at night, others are really good at working in the morning. So let people be. As long as you're organized and the deadlines are met, you shouldn't be forced to follow, you know, the 9 to 5 or whatever, unless there is a meeting, obviously, and everyone has to be together. Same goes to meetings though. I feel like I've gotten rid of so many pointless meetings since I've started contracting and being in different time zones. People only put a meeting in my calendar if I'm needed and if it's important. Because I don't know for you, but for me in the past, when I was working full-time, sometimes I was like, what was the point of that meeting? We chatted about personal things forever, and I understand there needs to be some team bonding and building, but sometimes it was so unproductive. I was like, gotten so much work done instead of doing that pointless meeting. I mean, so I feel like this is a great time to start as a nomad, because a lot of companies are now more open-minded, and if they need talent and they can't find them, they're actually ready and open to start looking around the world and hiring the right fit remotely, because it would be better to have a very good remote talent than an average talent that's onshore and that's going to come into the office. So I'm going to list some jobs that you could potentially do remotely. Again, this is not all of them, and we usually think like digital work, like graphic designer, digital marketer, content writer, content creator, web developer, but you've got some other ones as well. Like, I mean, you could be a coach or consultant, you could be a virtual assistant. Virtual assistants are more and more needed, and if you can speak several languages and fluently, especially if you've got very good English, let me tell you that you could become a VA in no time. HR is another one. Project management, bookkeeper or accountant. You don't need to be physically present. Sales as well. A lot of the tech companies and SaaS companies are looking for salespeople, and they're more flexible when it comes, they tend to be more flexible when it comes to remote working. So I feel like start looking into those as well. These are just a few examples. Obviously, I can't cover all the possible jobs in this video. If you've got some interesting job that you're doing, please share it as well in the comments so we can all see like what you're actually doing, and it might also help others do the same. The other question I tend to get quite a lot is, how can I become a digital nomad? So I've shared in a past video how I've started. So for me, I'd say if you can, depending on obviously the job and your personal situation, whether you like what you're currently doing or not, is actually talk to your employer and ask them and tell them about your project and come up with a plan on how this is going to work. Basically, employers are going to be scared. Like, there's no question about that. If you've always been working in an office, they're going to be like, but what are we doing? If you're already working from home, this is slightly different. It's more around the time zones, I guess. They would probably have questions around how you're going to manage your hours, how you're going to manage being far away from the team, how are you going to manage all these things being in another country, are you going to be as productive, or you have to tell them that you're not going to be like traveling all week or whatever, because then they're going to be thinking they're going on holidays, they're not going to do anything. So first point of call, if you're liking your job, if you're enjoying what you're doing, come up with a plan to convince them and tell them, look, here's my project, I care about this role, here's what I'm going to do in this role. Like for example, with me, any meetings I'm around, I try to be flexible with my hours, to be kind of like in their time zones if I'm needed. Obviously, I'm not going to wake up at 3 a.m. That's just me, that's what I've negotiated. But, you know, sometimes I've had to start at like 6 a.m. or sometimes I have to work at like 8 p.m. because I had a meeting or 9. Well, sometimes you have to, it's give and take, you know, they let you do you, but you also have to commit to get the work done and contribute and help the company. If you're working as a freelancer for a company or a client, if they ask you to be in a meeting at a certain time zone, I think you should be a bit flexible. Again, each to their own with negotiations, but that's me. They're flexible with me. I can work from anywhere in the world. I'm doing my own hours, but I always told them if there is an important meeting and I'm needed, within reasons, add me and we try to work out a time, because we still need to get work done and we still need to sometimes have interactions that are not just emails. I try not to travel during the week for some reason. Every time I've done it, something's gone wrong with the internet, and you need internet, and I need fast internet for what I'm doing, because the platforms I use, they really need a fast internet connection. And I've had so many times, like once in Greece, in a boat, got on a boat, it was meant to be free Wi-Fi and full Wi-Fi. I should know better. Obviously we got in the middle of the sea for hours. Impossible. The phone was not working, so let's be honest, like nothing, no coverage. And I was just like, God, okay, that's just what you do. But then you have to catch up at night, because I had like things to do that day and obviously it didn't get done. And when you're working on a deadline and in a certain project, you still have to service your clients. So this is one of the examples, you know, like something happens every time for some reason. I'm not lucky with that. So now I'm like, no, Audrey, only move locations during weekends. So at least if something goes wrong or you miss a connection, because that happened as well, my flight got delayed, had a meeting first thing in the morning. Let me tell you, I did not show up to that meeting and I didn't have a way to let them know either. That's really bad. So that's my advice, like commit, tell them how that's going to work, what is your plan, and ask them for a trial. And if you can, I would say maybe become a contractor. It's a bit riskier in terms of you don't have the security as the employee, but it's also for them a security that if you're not doing the job, they can get rid of you. And I mean, if you're good at what you're doing, you shouldn't be scared of that, of getting more clients, being more flexible. Like that's my preference. Again, if you want to remain an employee and they agree with that, that's fine. The other tip I'd say is probably try to, if they're like no, maybe tell them, okay, look, if you let me be flexible, I'm going to be flexible within reasons, again, with my pay. So you could perhaps tell them, I'm going to charge you less, and it's a win-win situation. You give me more flexibility and I ask for a bit less. And then you negotiate, you know, like that's the task that you're going to do. And if you can't do all the tasks, maybe it's letting go of some of the tasks you were doing as like a full-timer and see if there is someone in the team that could potentially take that on, that's onshore. So anything that's time sensitive, for example, if they're like, no, but you know, this is really important that you're doing that, and you're like, Bob, could potentially do that for us. He's really good at that.
Hello there.
And maybe we can train Bob. I'll train him to do that handover, so Bob can take on that part and I'll manage that part. Then if this is not working and they say no, I would look for remote jobs. Now you've got a few ways of doing it. If you do a search, let's say you're looking on job boards like, you know, LinkedIn, Indeed, or whatever is in your country, look for remote, because then that will open up a lot of jobs. Obviously add the keyword as well of your profession. So let's say for me, digital marketing remote, that will open up all the remote jobs, which is quite a good way to search. I'd say Facebook groups in your field are sometimes good. If you want to start as a freelancer, you could try platforms like Fiverr and list, you know, your profile and start looking for jobs that way. Reached out to people on LinkedIn that could potentially have like some jobs going on. Then I would look for companies that are actually remote first companies. So I've got a list here of some of like the top. Okay, here goes. Hubstaff, Swiftly, Doist, Ghost, Frontastic, TopTal, Automatic, FlexJobs, Zapier, Buffer. These are like 10 companies, for example, that actually hire people to work remotely. So you could try to look for those type of companies. Other thing you could be doing is actually start your own business. So let's say the example of like a salesperson, maybe you could become a sales consultant and charge fees for your services. Same if you're a beauty expert, same if you're a life coach. Same if you're in HR, you could potentially train HR teams. If you're in this to make it a lifestyle, earn money, I would definitely look at your skills. If they're transferable, if they're not, start thinking of what you want to do a course. Oh, sorry, my camera just died on me, so now I've got you on my phone. So if you're a newbie and you've never done it before and you're a bit worried to just, you know, go off and start doing the digital nomad life on your own, you could potentially look for some groups of, you have to pay, but there are some companies that do it. So you could contact companies like Wi-Fi Tribe or Nomad Base and pay for membership or pay for a chapter and meet other people, and it's all organized for you, which means you don't have to look for accommodation, you don't have to look for like new friends or whatever. You kind of like have that community available to you. Or if you're doing a chapter, you're put in a place with people and that is who you're going to live with for the next however long. So this is more of like an organized way to do it if you're not feeling confident to do it on your own. Honestly, I've never done it. I've only heard people talking about it. I'm not part of any group, or I've never done a chapter with anyone. I've always done it on my own. I didn't even know it was a thing until friends mentioned it. So from my personal experience, I'm not sure what it's like. I've heard good and bad things from people that have experienced it. So I feel like you need to make your own judgment on that one. It's very personal. If you're not willing to pay, which I don't think you need personally, I'd say the best way is, so looking for accommodation. How do I find a place to live quickly when I get to a location, or before I get to a location? I'd say that's my preference. I don't like getting somewhere and not knowing where I'm going to be. I organize it before I get to that location. I usually do it online, which is probably not the easiest way because you don't get to see the place physically and sometimes it's a bit deceiving, and you usually have to pay a deposit in advance. So you would want to make sure that the place is not dodgy and that who you're paying is actually having an apartment. Just be careful with this because some places are known to have a lot of issues with that, where you would be sold something and then you would get there and the apartment doesn't exist, or the person just disappeared and they just took your money. So do your research if you're going to do that. I've done it a few times. Luckily nothing has happened to me, but I've asked for all the credentials of the company. I've asked for all the details. I've checked that they're real. If I've got, you know, Facebook groups, you could ask on those groups. have you heard of it? Has anyone used anything? Use those groups. Like, there are a lot of Telegram, WhatsApp, Facebook groups that you can use to ask questions. So try and find them if you start searching digital nomad in the country or around the world or whatever. Someone will have some tip for you, or someone will be able to tell you, in that country I would use this and this and this website to try and like look for places to stay. So those websites obviously vary depending on where you're going to stay. I wish there was just the one website for everyone and then we would all go and look for accommodation, but you will need to adapt depending on the country you're looking into. Airbnb can be an option. Again, it can be expensive in most places, so I usually don't use Airbnb. There are some local agents, so again, if you start asking the digital nomad community, they will share their contacts. We tend to like all share contacts depending on the location. Again, you can reach out to me. If I've been to a location, I'll be able to share like the company, if I've got any tips for you, or the person that I rented through. You've got co-livings that are also available in most countries. So if you don't mind sharing and you need new friends, maybe a co-living option or a hostel, depending on how you want to do it. For me, I do this full time and I feel like I'm past that now. When I get home, I want like a quiet spot to, relax and unwind, and I'm also working from home, so I need like that kind of environment. But I would say try and look for those. The other thing is somewhere to work from. Look for co-working spaces, and usually co-working spaces may also have tips on where to stay, or sometimes the co-working also has accommodation, so that could be a good option. You're staying somewhere, you've got a working space there as well, and good internet, which is important. So these are some options. So yeah, the other question I get quite a bit is, when you get to a new location, how do you make new friends? What do you do? There are lots of things you could be doing. Again, use those groups, Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram. If you don't know what the WhatsApp or Telegram groups are, try and find Facebook groups. They will usually give you or invite you to join. I'd say go to meetups as well. Look if there are any meetups in the place you're staying at. That's an option. The other things I like doing is working from cafes, because a lot of nomads actually work from cafes and you end up having a chat with random people, and it's very cool. It's a really good way to meet people. The other one you could be doing is, if you're working in a co-working space, well, obviously they usually have events as well where you get to connect and meet people. You could go to entrepreneur events if that's what you're into. I find that they're very fascinating and interesting, more from like a networking point of view, but you could really make friends there as well if you've got the same mindset. And use potentially apps. I know some people have told me, I've not used it yet, but Bumble Friends, especially for girls, sometimes I feel like maybe connecting with other girls. So you could potentially use for Bumble Friends, and then if they're in the area, you could also make local friends. Because I find that what's interesting about traveling is not just stay with digital nomads, it's also branch out and try to meet people from the local culture. So I always try to do that. Whenever I go to a country, I don't just want to hang out with digital nomads. I want to hang out with the locals. That can be slightly more difficult. I also try to do activities where I could potentially meet locals. So for me, dancing is a big one. I like Latin dancing. Try to branch out from just, staying with nomads. Try and meet the locals, because that's the beauty. We're in a different country, so we need to mix with people that are there and start talking to people. I mean, if you go to a shop, start talking to people. Talk to the person that works at the shop. If you're in an Uber or a taxi, start talking to them. They usually have a lot of ideas and tips and information, and they share random facts that might be helpful for your travels. So just be open. Wherever you are is a potential. When you're traveling, people get out of their comfort zone, and you will see that you meet some very interesting people. You have some great conversation with random people that you probably wouldn't have if you were in your city doing your thing. So just try to be like super open-minded, and you'll see that you'll start to connect in wonderful ways with people, in ways that you would never think about. And last but not least, how much does it cost to be a digital nomad? Well, I feel like this depends on you, really. Obviously, short-term accommodation, short-term anything can be a little more expensive, but there are ways to save. So again, looking ahead of time for accommodation, looking for flights. If you're open to destinations, just put the country where you're living from. Don't put the destination and see what comes up. And that's your first destination right here. Welcome to the digital nomad life, and adapt. So I would say try to, you know, when you get to a place, ask the locals like, where can I eat? Where's the good food that's cheap? Look online. Google is your best friend. You find everything on Google, so start being good with the laptop and doing research. I find that that's going to be also very important. In terms of accommodations, you could do anything. If you really don't mind sharing, you could go down the route of, okay, I'm just going to stay in hostels and doing it that way, or look for those parallel groups and websites that are not Airbnb, where you can find like a month at a time maybe for accommodation. Or perhaps you could decide, if you travel full-time like me, okay, I'm going to at least stay for 2 months in a place, that's going to be my base for 2 months or 3 months, and then negotiate the price for those 3 months, which is usually cheaper than if you stayed for 2 weeks. Because believe me, after a while you will want to stay somewhere, because being with your suitcase everywhere, I don't travel with a backpack. Like, this is my full-time life, so I still have a suitcase with me. I need change of clothes, and I'm still a girl after all. So you might want to stay a little longer and then negotiate, you know, eating. If you've got a kitchen where you're staying, you can cook, so that shouldn't be too expensive as well. You don't have to eat out all the time. For the gym, depending on the weather, you could look for outdoor gyms. You could negotiate, you know, a month at a time. Gyms do that, or your building might have one, so look for buildings that do that. In Latin America, they've got lots of buildings that are fully equipped with like pool and gym. Country that's cheaper. You don't have to stay in Europe. Like, go branch out, go to, you know, other countries that are probably like cheaper to live in, like Bali or Latin America, or some places in Africa. I mean, it depends on how you want to do it. You can live the high life and get like a freaking expensive 1-bedroom apartment with views, or you can do it more conservative way. So the question around pricing is really personal. I don't think you would end up spending a lot more if you do it right, and if you're good with budgeting. And if you fancy like spending a little bit more, but you know that you're enjoying life and making memories, that's cool too. I mean, we only live once, so saving is great, but also enjoying a little bit is fine too.